I'd love to help you get vulnerable. Let's get naked.
Hey everyone, I'm Ann. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. Let's talk about what, as a society, we don't talk about enough: unhealed childhood trauma. The stuff that didn't just happen to us, it stayed with us. The things we were too young to process, too scared to name, too confused to even understand. The pain that got buried deep because no one ever gave us permission or language or space to deal with it. So we did what kids do. We survived. But here's the thing about trauma. Just because you bury it doesn't mean it dies. It just grows in the dark. And eventually, we grow up, but our pain grows with us. We become adults with jobs, kids, bills, and responsibilities, all while dragging around a suitcase full of broken pieces from a childhood that never got to heal. And because no one ever taught us how to sit with that pain or process it or feel it without shame, we numb. We numb with work, with drinking, with food, with TV, with porn, with isolation, with scrolling, with rage, with perfectionism. We tell ourselves that we're fine until one day we're not. Because that weight, that silent, invisible weight we've carried for years, it gets heavier and heavier until it's crushing us. And when we finally buckle beneath it, we don't always have a map out because the world never gave us the tools. It gave us silence. It gave us shame. And for some, when the pain becomes too loud and the silence becomes too deafening, suicide starts to look like the only way out. And that is the tragedy. Not just the loss of a life, but the explosion of pain that ripples through the people who tried to love that man, the family who stood by helplessly, watching someone they cared about slowly fall apart, unable to reach them, the partners who begged them to open up, the kids who are now left asking questions with no answers, the trauma that doesn't end with death, but multiplies. This is the cost of unspoken pain. This is what happens when we don't talk about trauma, when we don't prioritize emotional intelligence, when we keep pretending that just toughing it out is a plan. We have to stop acting like silence is strength. We have to stop stigmatizing therapy, emotional expression, healing. We have to stop letting broken boys become broken men who are taught to bleed in the dark. We have to speak out about this, loudly, bravely, nakedly. Because when we shine light on the wounds, that's when healing starts. That's when we say, you're not alone. That's when we begin to shift this culture, not just for us, but for the next generation. Let's get naked. Let's get real. Let's get free. Today, I'm stripping it all off with Mélissa-Sue Methven. She is a mother, author of the book, The Truth Behind the Smiles, registered dental hygienist, breathwork facilitator, and speaker. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Oh, wow, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful intro. I could
you.
feel that.
Thank you.
And really resonated to every word that you talked about in there. That introduction is beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I think when we talk about big topics like we are going to today, it's important to just kind of set the stage that those of us that are not going to be silent about things anymore, we need to say the big things. We need to say the things that, broken boys turning into broken men kind of stuff, because I watch it happen in brothers, fathers, husbands. I don't want that to happen with our sons, right? And our daughters. And I know that you feel strongly about the exact same things. And so I'm so happy to have you here today. So
yes.
If you want to maybe just start by kind of giving us a one rundown of the last couple of years. It's been a little bit of a wild ride, and we can back out of it from that point.
Yeah,
but maybe tell us about
absolutely.
your book that you wrote and what sparked that for you.
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, I am So if I lived in Alaska for 16 years with my husband, and he was a dentist, Scott Methven. We owned our practice in Wasilla, Alaska. And there was definitely a lot of numbing. And you talk about childhood traumas or abandonments and things that were just kind of tucked away.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely my husband. And not given the tools for emotional intelligence. And unfortunately, that all led to him dying by suicide in March 2022. Mm-hmm. And that is when I truly, truly felt very called to start using my voice, which was not something I was raised to do. I was always the people pleaser. You asked my grandma who I was as a young little girl from Quebec City, Canada. I was very shy, very quiet, and often just kind of hid behind a smile, all the emotions, because that was the safest emotion to share. And that's why the title of my book is The Truth Behind the Smiles, because one thing we definitely had in common, my husband and I, was to hide behind our smiles, and we were really good at that. Mm-hmm. So once he passed, I felt a strong calling to use the word suicide. I had a lot of people ask me, what do you want us to say? How he passed? And I said, died by suicide. Yeah. And even for my own children at the hospital with their guidance, they said died by suicide due to his brain illness. And also my children were old souls. Yeah. I mean, they had seen Dad, and there was trauma prior to him passing, mm-hmm. Signs of his opioid addiction, alcohol. And there was just, they could see that progression as well. Yeah, so I definitely felt called to use my voice and share. And a lot of it was more just with friends, social media. We had a dental practice, so I had to kind of, use a social media platform to advise patients mm-hmm. and use my voice. And the more that I shared, the more people came back and said, oh, I had a relative die by suicide as well, or I have a child who deals with suicide ideation. Mm-hmm. So I saw it as a safe place where people didn't have to suppress anymore, because that's one thing I realized. I started getting really curious as to what happened, that progression, that slow progression. It was just, overnight. Right. And a lot of it, I saw suppression, both for my husband and I, suppressing his childhood. Mm-hmm. And then, getting married. Well, he had never dealt with a childhood, and neither have I.
Right, of course,
it's
right.
Same with me. I just kind of suppressed that. Right. And then now we go into a relationship mm-hmm. and how that led for him to get a numbing. Mm-hmm. He was a dentist, so it's very much a backbreaking work. So the introduction of opioids are very much a norm in dentistry. It's very common. And so it's just once in a while. And then, of course, if you never take care of yourself and your own body, that inflammation just keeps building up. And I'm a firm believer of energy exchange. And as a dentist and dental professional, you're dealing with patients that carry a lot of fear and anxiety, and you take that on. And if you never release it, then as a practitioner, you just hold all of that.
Just more weight.
Yeah, more and more weight.
I saw something that was so powerful to me, and it was just a clip that it was talking about all of this weight that we carry across the course of our lives, right? And so we pick these weights up, and maybe it was a 5-pound weight or a, whatever it is. And this man is showing this as a visual as he's walking across the stage. And by the time he gets to the other side of the stage, he's got, a barbell over his shoulders, and he's got all of these weights that are hooked to his belt and hooks to his whatever. And it's like what you're describing to me as far as your husband kind of taking that. If he's not taking care of himself where he is releasing that, he's just adding more weight and more weight and more weight, and with no tools to deal with it, right? It's funny because when I talk about childhood trauma, a lot of people think that must mean getting the shit kicked out of you or sexual trauma or whatever. It doesn't have to mean those things, right? Having a mother who's, or parents, either one, who are emotionally unavailable for you, abandonment, rejection. There's all of these different things that kind of come in that don't have to look like these big things where you say, well, I didn't have sexual abuse, or I didn't have this or that. If you don't process your childhood and you just start piling on top of that, that's how we get to this place of all of us numbing,
Yes,
you know? And it's
I hear so much people saying, well, I didn't have it as bad as this person, so my stress is not. I said, no, your body reacts just the same way, you know, and you have to really recognize that. And then, finding ways to, the tools to express all the time. Think about it. A dentist will see 30 to 40 patients a day, back to back. Right. And if you're never taking any time, so this becomes this heavy, heavy weight on top of owning practice. There's, you know, I have a chapter, the dark side of dentistry. And I do speak a lot about that because there's just not enough awareness for dentists. So, and I know I'm trying to introduce breath work for the dental community as well. I'm even saying, you know, we wash our hands in between each patient. So why don't you incorporate a breathing technique when you're washing your hands? Yes. And then cutting that line of that last patient and moving on before you move on to the next one. You know, just those little tools. It doesn't have to be very long. Right. And, but unfortunately for my husband, it's just one weight after another. You know, it was also, then he got into a litigation, you know, a lawsuit for 7 years. And that was so heavy for him. And for him, a lot of it was, he you know, wanted to be right. And, you know, sometimes we're like, we want justice. We know we're right. But now I saw who won was the two lawyers. Wow, they did really well. Of course. They did really well. But it was 7 years where both sides, it was so much darkness and so much weight. Instead of leaving it out and letting it go and surrendering to wanting to be right, because sometimes this is going to cause you to have so many chronic illnesses and deepen, you know, his depression and numbing. It just progressed, you know, and then he gets news that his dad is terminally ill and he's just so saddened. So it's almost, you have to release these weights because you're going to constantly have challenges in life. And so you got to prep your body. And that's where I really got curious in my own healing, because I read so many books of people that went through, you know, dark times and what did they do to get out? Because I was also, when I traveled back to Wasilla, Alaska, I go, how did I not fall as well? Yeah. I mean, I was starting to. Yeah. People said I started to change, not doing some of the things I used to. That light was starting to dim, but I was still, you know, I've always exercised. I ate really well and I had a fantastic community up there that kept me okay. Yeah. You know, but I was starting, my body was starting to speak. I went through, it started all in the gut. I truly believe that that's your first signals, you know, the gut-brain connection is real, because for me, that's where it spoke first, acid reflux and not being able to eat just bone broth and crackers. And then it's the hormones, you know, and losing my hair and not sleeping well and just wondering what's going on, you know, even periods changing. And but you go see all these specialists and like, oh, you have GERD. Oh, well, take 800 milligrams of ibuprofen and this and that. And I'm like, well, it didn't make sense.
This is a terrible plan, right?
Yes, yeah, it didn't. And I started asking more and more questions, seeing more functional medicine and naturopath, and realizing that I was the stress, adrenal fatigue. And so I dove into breath work and meditation because I wanted to take care of myself, because I said I can't fall too. Right, or your kids saw the pain. Yeah, I saw the pain that my kids endured losing their father, and that as a parent, you try and keep them so safe, right? That was so me. I tried to hide so much from them, and I thought that was good. You know, I was going to hide everything and keep them so safe. And now I couldn't keep them safe from this pain, this immense pain. I said, I better do everything possible so I don't fall, so I could show up for them and also give them the tools, because unfortunately, suicide was also from generations on Scott's side. You know, on both sides of the family. And I truly believe that when we are born, we're also already carrying generational curses or things that are passed down, even the toxic load is passed down.
I agree with you 1,000%.
You know, I more that I dive into the gut health and everything, I know that the mom's gut biome transfers to the baby, you know, and then that's the toxic load that they start with, you know, from generations. And so I'm a firm believer in all of that now because I've seen it.
Right.
Seen it with my own kids and myself. I'm like, oh, my own science experiment almost, because I'm getting curious. I've brought my children to Dr. Amon's clinic for brain scan because I know there's something, and I couldn't get to the root cause of it. I've done gut tests now, mold testing, and a lot of it is in the gut for them. There's mold, heavy metals, and it's all affecting the brain. So I'm seeing correlation as well for mental health, anxiety, depression, and it all starts there. And probably with my husband, you know, he never ate very well, didn't exercise, and, you know, took time to take care of himself. You know, he was really good dentist though, and perfectionist, and loved his patient. He gave so much. Like he was such a generous man, but as much as he was generous, he almost had to give back to himself,
right.
You know?
Well, you have to be able to give from your overflow. And when you're not doing that, right, because you don't know better, because we're not taught with the tools to do that, which I totally got in the same exact trap, right? You end up at this place where it's like it comes out sideways, where you're numbing with the, you know, the opioids and the alcohol and the, you know, whatever else your numb of choice is, and you're just literally triaging. It almost feels like, you know, you go to work and you put the coins in the back of somebody and they come to life, and it's like do 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 do, and he goes and he smiles and he does all the things, and then comes home at the end of the day and just literally triages with whatever numb of choice he is, so that he can get back up the next day and do 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 do, put another couple of quarters in, and off we go again. Never dealing with any of that. Like, of course we get to these places where we break. And for some of us, it's we drink our lives into oblivion. Some of it's suicide. Some of us, it's, you know, completely numbing to the point where you're just a zombie in your own life. And when you realize, you know, for me, my purpose with this podcast is, yes, talk about all the things, but then also share with people, it doesn't have to be like that. You know, we've come where we just support that whole concept of, okay, I have acid reflux. Well, great, let's give you this pill or that pill. And then you're just compounding on top of that, until you don't even know where it started. You know, so it's like when you say get curious, yes, that's what I'm peddling, is get curious about yourself. Figure out, pull back the layers of, why do I feel like that? Why do I believe that? Let's unpack that, you know, and that's just literally getting quiet with yourself. That doesn't have to cost anything. That doesn't have to anything. Take a blanket, go sit at a park with a journal. Don't take your phone. Just go sit. You know how powerful that is to be able to figure out that stuff, right? And then being able to talk about it with other people where there's not this shame associated with it, right? With any of the things that we talk about. No shame. There's no shame on any of that. Being able to grieve in front of your children so that they can see that, right? The stuff that you talk about in your book is so powerful to me, because it's like, is that the popular answer, what you did? No. Is it the right one? I 1000% agree with you, right? Like, I healed from my stuff in front of my children, not being ashamed of it. You know, we went out to dinner last night. We were talking about, I've been sober for 8 years, talking with my son about what that was. He just turned 18, so he was 10 when I got sober. And I wasn't shy about, you know, going through all of that in front of him, but he was asking me different questions last night about things, and just saying to him, like, but I was at the place where I was abusing prescription meds that I was not supposed to be drinking with, and then drinking a lot on top of it. Like, I was drinking to blackout a couple of times a week. Saying that to that young man was hard to do, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to let him not see the gross side of that, because that's where it leads. If you just let the numbing get out of hand, because it feels so good to numb, because you don't have to address any of the shit that's in that messed up bag that you carry forward from stuff, you know? But when we realize, like, do the work. The work feels so good to be able to get it out. Is it painful? 1000%, right? You know if you've done the work. But like, you look at that and you're talking about you and your husband. You didn't do the work. He didn't do the work. Not on any fault of your guys. You didn't even know it was a thing. Same thing with my husband and I, right? You just get together. And then it's like, well, what does that look like? And you can see as it unfolds in front of you, of like numbing, not being there for each other, just literally trying to triage yourself so that you can get up and give the best parts of your day to your work, and then come home and give shit to your family, right? Because that's where you feel like you can just unplug and numb. But it's like, shouldn't it be the opposite, right? Our families are the most important things to us, right? But we
Absolutely.
do. We're so conditioned to like have everyone think that what the perfect, right? You're saying put the smile on, hiding behind the smile, all the
ego,
thing, right? It is. The
yeah.
ego's the worst.
Yeah, I think for my husband, every time I'd say, let's just let it go. Let's
Yeah.
downsize. Let's sell the practice.
Yeah.
Let's become like it had become such an identity.
Yes.
The house, the office,
Right.
and for him also being that Superman, 6'4", handsome. He's like, wow, removing that mask, he thought there'd be so much shame and people wouldn't think of him as higher. But I feel when you do remove, people are like, wow, that was so courageous.
Yes.
And it allows other men, for him,
Yes.
if he did, to do the same.
Yes.
I
find the exact same thing, right? When I have men on this podcast and they're able to share their stories and the different things and not be ashamed about the past that they have and the healing that they've done, it shows other men that they can have permission to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
When you said something about him needing to be right with the lawsuit, it definitely resonates with me as far as just men in life. Most specifically, I see it in women too, but most specifically in men, there's this thing where it's like they don't know how to deal with whatever the emotion is that happened when they were wronged, right? And they literally turn that back into where they dig their heels in. And I've watched men destroy their lives for needing to be right, you know? And I always used to joke around with my husband about like, I would rather be happy than right. He would rather be right than happy, right? I'm trying to change him slowly because it's like, what is the cost, right? Like,
huge
if
cost.
right?
Oh, yeah.
What was the cost for your husband? It literally destroyed his life.
It did.
It destroyed his
really
life.
did.
And so if you realize, if you put these things into your hands, okay, I can be right, but then what does that matter?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, who gives you like a pat on the back of like, great job, you ruined your whole family, but by really digging in your heels on something, where's the value in that?
Oh yeah, he was ready to spend all his money to be right. He was ready, all his time.
Yeah, he gets
and
obsessed
like even we
with
were,
it.
yeah, it was an obsession. Absolutely. It took, I remember, because we'd work together. He'd be late for patients because he was on the phone with lawyers or, the police department, things like that. And he was just he was like, oh, so close. And then it was always, when we win, then all these happen. And I saw it the opposite.
Right. You're like,
no,
you're
no.
destroying our lives.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was just over consuming every night, and like you painted such a great picture with going to work, because yes, we would go to work together. He'd have this smile. He's a great sense of humor with each patient, so he was really great. But the minute he walked home, he would go walk to his own room, very dark, and unplug. Yeah, with phone. We would not see him.
Yeah.
He'd actually get up when we go to sleep. Because he didn't sleep very well. And so much numbing, the numbing of, the opioids at this point had, muscle relaxer. He was on some antidepressants, but again, they're just, just a variety of things, a pornography addiction as well. Just all these dopamine hits that he was looking from the outside, so he wouldn't have to feel what was really going on, the root cause of feeling wronged or abandonment and or even going back to childhood. For him, therapy was scary, and I don't know why. I mean, when I talked to, family members, a lot of it was from past generations, when they would go to therapy, the shock therapy and all that, like that was scary.
Right. And so that's what they maybe associate some of that with, where it isn't like, okay, we're actually going to get better here. It's scary from that
It's scary
standpoint.
for them. And I know family history, bipolar and whatnot. And maybe he was afraid of a diagnosis or anything and lose his license. I don't know, but it was definitely not something he wanted to step in. So then I would go and see therapists, and hopefully they give me tools I could bring back home. And, I had found a rehab center was mostly doctors. There was only 6 of them. I was like, maybe you could fly and take a month. But it'd always be like, I'm not addicted, and I got full control of everything. So, and when he would talk about these antidepressants he was on, he's like, well, no, it's an antidepressant, but I use it for nerve damage, because he was in a lot of pain. So it was just so hard for him to remove that mask and really truly see himself. And I love that you say you don't need a lot of money to go through therapy. Honestly, it's that quiet stillness space. I know when I finally moved to Arizona, is all I remember saying. It's like, I just feel like I need space.
Yeah.
Like I just needed, I disconnected from social media. So many people, it was so wonderful. I had a wonderful community checking in on us and my family. We had meals delivered to us for 3 months. We had cleaning services. We had so many like donations and really lifted up, you know? But at one point I was like, I can't answer any more phone calls. I just needed quietness. And I really did find that. I actually started going to a place called Reconnect Mind Body. And it's an hour of just cold plunging, sauna, red light therapy, and then I would do breath work as well. And through breath work is where I did profound healing from generational, you know, and also PTSD from me finding my husband. That vision, I would go to the gym, I go grocery shopping, and all of a sudden I would see that vision and I'm about to break and cry. But I've had programmed myself since a 5-year-old girl to not cry in public. So I'd just run and I would hide, you know. But breath work allowed me to just completely unload after breath work session and just cry in somebody's arms. And it was just that safe container. And being able to process the PTSD vision, I still remember it came at a breathwork session. It came right in my face. And I was like, whoa, really caught off guard. But then it was just like, you know, God was saying, let it go.
Let it go.
Let it
We're
go.
not meant to carry that stuff around. I am a huge proponent of breath work. I found that when I went to rehab 8 years ago was when I was first introduced to it. And what it revealed for me during that session was just mind-boggling. And I've started doing it very regularly over the last year. I kind of came back to my life and was just trying to put the pieces of my life back together. And so, you know, didn't really follow up with that until about a year ago, where I was like, why haven't I gotten back into that, you know? And so I found somebody locally that I see. And now I've gotten to the point over the last year where I host events at my house where I just want people to be able to come experience that, because the healing that comes out of the breath work and the intensity that the gal that and she's been on the podcast, but to me, the breath work is huge for all of that. My husband now does it with me, and he's, you know, realizing kind of the benefits of really being able to do that, because I don't need a tough man who doesn't talk about stuff until something breaks.
Right.
Let's do the work now.
Yeah.
Right. And does it look pretty? No. But I'll hold space for any man that wants to be able to do that, because I think, you know, we've spent all of this time focusing on women, which I love women, and I'm women empowerment, I'm all the things, right? I'm going to always be supportive. But I look at our men, because I have a dad and brothers and my husband, my son, and it's like, we need to be able to help them as well, you know? So I was talking with the breathwork gal about, all right, I'm starting a men's group. I don't know why the hell I'm doing that, but the universe told me I'm doing that now. So I asked a couple of people about, like, these men, would you come over and do breathwork if I put this together? And I have a half a dozen men that are like, yep, I'm in.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't be more proud, right? So I'm like, I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm happy to hold space for these men, because I've always had more of a masculine energy anyways. And so to be able to be approachable, where it's like, I can hold space for men. I don't have any problem with that. Like, there's not a demon that you have that's going to scare me. Wow. I've seen it all. Do you know what I mean? I've seen a lot of gross shit, you know, but it's like, let that stuff go so you don't have to carry it. You know, the visualization that I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, where you're carrying all of this weight and you don't even realize it. It's like, you want to live your life like that? Yeah. This human experience is freaking Disneyland. We've literally been put in Disneyland. There's all of these things that you can come from this place of awe and wonder and exploring your life, right? To me, I'm like, get back to that 8-year-old kid. You know, I was talking to my husband about all of these things where it's like all of these grown men who are 40, 50, 60 years old, who are doing all of the things that you're talking about your husband was doing just to try to get a hit. Any hit, doesn't matter, right? Yeah. All of the things where it's like, I just want to feel something. How are you going to feel something when you're numbing out with all of those things? I'm not coming from a place of judgment. We all do it. We all have done that, right? But when you realize we don't have to do that, you can really get rid of all of that shit and get down to who you are at your core, because it's not about adding more. It's about taking away. Yes. It's about finding out and remembering who you were, right? And to me, the breath work has done that for me.
It reconnects you to your heart.
Oh my God, it totally does. And it helps you like clean out all of that gunk that we've stored on top of it for whatever reason, right? You were taught to smile and to be a people pleaser and to be silent, and you be uncomfortable so that someone else isn't uncomfortable. That's where we are in this game, where I'm like, absolutely not. Don't you dare be uncomfortable. I know. I don't give a fuck who's uncomfortable, right? Let everybody else be uncomfortable. You're the only one who you're supposed to take care of, right? So being able to really understand that and say, I'm going to go all in on me. I'm going to figure out what in my knowing, in my nectar, in my core, who am I, right? Because the rest of it doesn't matter. The rest of the programming, either from society or organized religion or your upbringing or whatever those things look like, tear all that shit away. Tear it all away, right? What's left underneath there? Because I believe, not saying that I'm done with my work, but I believe that I've found that little 8-year-old girl. And I go through life with this sense of awe and wonder that is magical. Every day is the best day of my life. And that doesn't mean shit doesn't happen. That doesn't mean things don't fall apart. That doesn't mean whatever. I'm not numbing out. I'm feeling things, right? Which sucks, right? I'm in my office yesterday. My son's graduating from high school. I used to not cry, but apparently when you stay open, you have to feel your emotions when they come up, not push them down, which is not pretty or popular. But it doesn't matter. I've agreed to do that because that's the mission that I'm on, you know? So my right-hand gal comes in and I'm crying in my office and she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I just saw my son in his, in his cap and gown and whatever." It's just like, I hate it, love it. It's amazing, you know?
You almost want to pat yourself on the back and be like, I just did that. I cried in front of somebody. Exactly. I just did that a couple of weeks ago. I took the RV for Easter and I was like, let's go camping. Yes. And I was just going through some stuff and I show up at the check-in at the RV place and I just start bawling. I was like, I guess, I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm going through so much." She's like, "Let it out. Go to the creek and let it all out there. You're in the perfect place." And she just held space for me. And I was like, I came out, I was like, I just did that. I'm like, right on. Like, I am healing, because I'm able to just cry in front of, my kids too. And I truly just apologize when I know I'm in the wrong with my kids, but showing that these emotions are normal and asking the question as to why are they coming, where are they coming from? And ultimately we don't want to sit in the fear and the shame. We want to feel peace. But how do we get there? How do we, all of us want to feel peace. Yes. And that's really getting in the deep dark. It is. You have to get the real deep dark and ask the questions, sit alone and feel it. See that 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, and what does she need? Yeah. Right?
Right. And letting her know that it's okay, right? Like, it was wrong that you had to suppress that. Right? In your specific story about like smiling and just making other people comfortable. It was wrong that people did that. Were they giving you the best that they could? Yes, right? Your grandma didn't know better. Your mom didn't know better, right? They're not psychopaths. They're just doing the best that they can with what they had, and passing that down to you. But really realizing that's not the right thing. Our emotions are actually our superpower, right? That's what your knowing is, right? You're supposed to be able to be in tune with those things. And for me, I just feel silly that I spent 40 years of my life pushing that shit down and like, no one's going to see me. I'm so tough. Look at all of this weight that I can carry. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I look back now and I'm like, silly woman. Silly woman. I didn't know any better, I saw my mom being very emotional when I was growing up. It looked so messy to me because she was just she didn't have a lot of a good example either. I mean, she was just dealing, playing the hand that she was dealt as well. But it's like, I looked at that and I thought, that seems horrible. I'm not going to do that, So I would be the masculine side of things and, okay, I've got all of this. It's no problems. I can handle all of the things. For what? You get a gold star at the end?
Yes,
or like,
right? We feel like I'm so strong. I can do everything on my own.
It's like, for what, right? We're not meant to do that. Yes. We're meant to be in connection. We're meant to be able to share stuff with people and be able to really say like, here's the messy shit I went through. Let me give you some tips and tricks to what worked for me. Obviously, what you're going to do is going to be different, and support each other from a place of non-judgment. Hold space for each other. As a society, we've gotten so far away from that. How does anybody feel comfortable to even come from this place of like, here's the mess that I'm going through? Because everyone is so quick to judge. Yeah. But when you realize that those people that are judging, they haven't done any of their own inner work. And when you're judging other people, you're judging yourself first. I didn't realize that concept until the last couple of years where I'm just like, it blew my mind. I'm like, all of those things that I was judging other people for are things in myself that I needed to look at, So when I started to do that, I was like, this is powerful. Because when you talk about the fear and the shame, I don't want to live in either of those things, right? And to me, it's either you're living in the fear or love. And that's which bucket do you want to be in? Because everything that we have in our society is rooted in fear. Am I good enough? Am I, we're dividing each other with political parties and who believes this. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit, right? Who gives a shit what you think? I don't care what you think. I don't care what I think, right? Like, let's figure out how to get down to who we are at our core, who our light is, who our energy is, right? And then just have fun in this world. Yeah. Be good people. Be of service to other people. When you figure all of that out, like you get to this place where it's like, how can I help? How can I do my part, right? What is my part? I read something in a book the other day, and it said something about get in the flow, do your part, and enjoy the ride. And if you can figure out how to do that, God, that's wild.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's like the rest of the shit doesn't matter. And it's like, but what about, and then what happened, right? When someone says something to me, and it's like, but I was this and I was that and I was whatever. And then what happened? And I don't mean to downplay anybody's stuff, but it's like, let it go. You're going to let shit that happened to you 30 years ago dictate today. Do you know how beautiful today is? Do you know the amazing things that are happening today? Right? Like, it's like going to a restaurant, getting food poisoning, and then asking for a to-go container so that you can fucking bring that home and eat it every day for the rest of your life.
That's a good
right? It's like, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Yes.
That's the worst plan on the planet, by the way. But that's what we're dealt.
Yeah,
that's what we do,
right? That's kind of a big part of my healing, like letting go. Writing my book was completely letting it go. It doesn't define me. I don't carry it with me. It's actually, I see it as a gift. I wouldn't be where I am sitting with you now sharing a story if that didn't happen, right? And if for me being of service every day, I say, okay, how can I be of service? And if it is just sharing my story and helping others be able to share theirs and not, or also I like to just plant that seed. Like, where are you sitting in our timeline? I think people can find themselves either in my story or my husband's story, you know, and or even my kids, you know, I had taught them to hide behind the smiles, but, and nudging you to be like, okay, maybe I need to start digging and seeing what's out there, to giving resources as to where to go, where to start, you know. I mean, nowadays we've got a great platform with podcasts where I love podcasts. I listen to them all the time, and I love yours because it is so raw.
Thank you.
It's authentic and it's real stories, you know.
It is, and it's I believe that my mission is just to hold space, right, for other people as they heal, as they talk about things. That's all I want to do. I told my husband, it's giving me full body chills. I just want to hold space for other people, you know, people don't even understand sometimes when I say hold space. And it's like, you don't have to say anything, right, if that's not what's called for that situation, but just to really meet someone where they are in their journey, in their healing, so that they don't feel judged, so that they don't feel like they're doing the wrong thing. There's a lot of messy stuff that's out there, right? So it's like being able to do that, it feels like the honor of my life, you know, when people realize, like, fix your shit. We don't have to pussyfoot around stuff. We don't have to sugarcoat it. There's gross stuff that happens, right? All of the things that we're talking about, fucking suicide and numbing and being people-pleasing and hiding behind smiles and carrying all this weight. We're suffering in silence, right? There was a line in what I read where it's talking about, you know, broken men that are bleeding in the dark. Yeah. And when you look at that, it's like, God, that hurts my soul to say, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it really is. Because they hide it so well. They've learned to hide it so well. Like, for example, the day before my husband died by suicide, we were in Maui. This all happened in Maui. We were snorkeling in Lanai with friends. He's smiling. He's happy. He's talking. We're holding hands. We're talking about when we get home. He was never open to therapy, but he's like, let's buy some books. Let's read a chapter every night. I said, love to. Yes. You know? And we get back to our condo, make a nice steak dinner. Like, it was, honestly, there was so much hope. Yes. And the next day he takes his life. So yes, there's bleeding. There's so many men out there hurting like that. Actually, yesterday I met with Tyler Hall locally, and he showed me this video about this soccer video, and it showed they're at a soccer game, they're cheering, there's two men. And there's one guy that's a little bit subdued when he's cheering on for the team. So you're thinking he's the depressed one. And I thought so. I'm watching this video. I'm like, oh, this guy's a little subdued when there's like a goal, and his friend's like, yeah. But the next clip is the friend who was subdued putting a little, that he's no longer has his friend who was so enthusiastic, loved the game, and he passed.
You don't even realize that, like, what that last straw is going to be for people. You don't realize how bad they're suffering. Like, you realized, yes, something was wrong with your husband, right? Obviously, you see the numbing, you see all of these things, but you didn't know, right? Like you said, there was hope, there was all of this stuff. So it's like you just never know what somebody is going through. So being able to say, I'm done perpetuating and being silent so that our broken men are bleeding in the dark. I'm not doing it anymore. Like I want to be the one that is standing up and saying, we don't have to do this. Hey, you guys, we can go a different way. Yeah. Because I watch as the men in my life, my brother, right, who's doing the work, my husband who's doing the work. I watch as the awe and the wonder come back into these men, not from trying to get a dopamine hit because they've numbed enough. Right? Not from enough booze, not from enough food, not from enough porn, not from enough whatever, but from getting all of that shit away and feeling like an 8-year-old boy. Because what I'll tell you is, my favorite thing on this planet is to look at a grown man and see the 8-year-old boy inside of him smile. We were at a baseball game, and I was watching as the security guard who stands watching out at the stands, the players were going by him, and he was fist pumping them. And I could see his little eight-year-old boy inside this 50-year-old man just smiling. He wasn't really smiling, but you could see him smiling underneath. And I'm like, yes, how do we get more of that shit, right? Because that's the stuff where it's like, we should be cultivating that, right? When I'm out looking at something or doing something that makes me feel like a kid as a 47-year-old woman, I'm like, yes, more of that. Yeah. More of that and less of the shit that I was dealt that I don't have to carry around. Right? When you're not carrying all that stuff around that you don't even realize that you're carrying around, you get to plug in with life in a way that's actually like amazing.
So true.
It is amazing.
It's so true. Going back to what you really love as a child to do, being creative. And I love men that now are, getting curious and wanting to go dig deeper. Okay, why am I having these patterns? Like, that's sexy to me.
I agree with you 1,000%. I've never found my husband more sexy than when he's like, let's fucking dig into why I'm like this. I'm like, oh my God, let's.
I know. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Like, foreplay.
Yes, that's a turn on. And the way they start processing and asking, being open to, breath work, being open to hypnotherapy, being open to just journaling. Journaling, men that are journaling every day now, and journaling is such a great way to release.
It's everything.
I've been telling everybody should write a book.
Well, exactly, because it is. It's so therapeutic to be able to look at that and say, like, what is my story? What is my nectar? What is that knowing inside of me? Where's that 8-year-old girl? It can be a different age for everybody, right? For me, it just happens to be 8. But I look at that and I remember when we were 8, we didn't have all this bullshit. If I saw you on the playground, Melissa, I would have run over and been like, hey, you want to be friends? Do we do that anymore? Right? Like, I look at that and I think we've so divided each other with these. We're all trying to be this person that isn't even really a person. That's all put together, and don't let anybody see the mess. Put all that shit under the rug. Keep it in the family. Keep it behind. We don't want to show that. And it's like, how is that working out for everybody? Just out of curiosity.
I was so good at that.
Absolutely.
Like the cover of my picture. I grabbed that because that was our advertisement for the dental office. But I remember where we were at, where my husband was at in that picture. And we look picture perfect on there, But we were not.
Yeah, and when you understand that you're hiding all of that, right? Which, again, no judgment. We all do that, but that's why I'm saying, like, let's shatter that, and you're in the same position, right? Of like, no, I'm not going to be soft for everybody else so that you can remain comfortable. I'm not going to use different words other than the word suicide. This is what happened. This is what happened in my life, right? This is what happened to my family and my kids. And you know why, right? Especially when you explain the whole weight thing. When I see this man in a business suit and he's dragging a ball and a chain behind him, it just breaks my heart for him. It's like, who said you had to do that? But as society, we did. Be strong. Keep it all together for the family. I say, or not. Let's try the other way, because we know what it looks like when all of the men are trying to keep it together, right? Which is, to me, I think school shootings, right? All of that stuff where it just comes out in anger and rage. That's the break. For some men, it's suicide. Absolutely. For some men, it's these other things. But it's violence, it's violence, right? Because that's what we've taught them to do. We haven't given them any tools. We haven't given them any outlets, right? And then we just expect that they carry all of this shit. And you don't get to be the 8-year-old boy anymore. Now you have all of these crappy responsibilities and shit on top of, childhood trauma that you never were able to unpack or encouraged to unpack or any of that. And so I say, let's unpack it all. I'll hold space for anybody that wants to unpack their shit. How? When did you get into breath work? I'm curious because I find that so powerful.
So after I moved here in July 2022, I started my journey of healing. I invested a lot of money, a lot of time, because I knew I needed it, because I said, I can't continue living in fight and flight. Then I'll get sick. And so after a year of doing breath work for myself, for my own healing, I was in awe of how much I was able to process. So I said, I need to learn more about it, and I want to become a breathwork facilitator. I actually went and took a course in Austin with Jaggers and Fitch. They own Somatic IQ. And oh my gosh, it was such a profound, we were 52 students.
Oh, wow.
And all over the world. There were some people that flew in from Oman, Panama, like all Mexico. And the diversity of the group was incredible. I met some that were doctors, some addicts, past addicts, and this is what helped them, cancer survivors.
Yes.
And I mean, everybody's story was so incredible as to why they wanted to become a breathwork facilitator. And as our last day, we're now having to guide our own 1 hour journey with somebody else. We partner up. Oh my gosh, I felt this intense energy as I'm doing this for this person. And she had a remarkable, session. And I said, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this and sharing this gift to others. And that's how I got into it. And now I was doing, virtual and one-on-one, and I really, really like that. But one of my favorite ones I did recently was for a group of dentists, actually. We did it in Sedona, and Dr. Delphine had asked me to co-facilitate with her in Sedona, and she's a fantastic Reiki energy healer, and she talks about her own story as well. And so I felt honored, and we went for a 3-day and guided these dentists through back to their heart. Oh gosh, it was so profound. We're still connecting now. And so I do feel there's something, an integration time that is really good to have as well afterwards to kind of process what just happened and the journaling. So I really, really love hosting, like co-facilitating with retreats, because I think there's so much. I never come back the same myself when I go to like a 2-3 day retreat.
Right.
So it's fun to be part of that process for somebody else.
Right.
And so that's how I got into it. Yeah. And then also now my mentor as well as a breathwork here is Jeremy Mudick. And so I took his course as well because he's got a different style. And so I just, I'm really passionate about breathwork and being able to give that.
Yeah, it's amazing to me because I really believe that is, I love all of the healing modalities that people explore, but for me, breath work is the most powerful. And I think just being able to realize that you don't have to do years and years of therapy for stuff. I've watched it happen in my brother, who we always used to joke when we were younger and until recently that we were dead inside, right? Because we didn't process our emotions. To watch him go through that, to watch my husband go through that. And I think each time that you do it, it's always a different experience depending on kind of how you show up. And there's all of the different things for that. But after a good breathwork session, sometimes that feels like about a year of therapy.
Yes.
I've just talked like traditional talk therapy. So it's like, if you're down, if you're interested to get down to business, finding a really intense or a powerful breathwork facilitator, and there are all of those different kind of styles that people have, which I think is
for me, the style, we definitely start the first 30 minutes where it's actually moving through the sympathetic nervous system. I'm actually trying to activate that because, every memory of your lifetime is stored, just like the book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? And so we're really trying to move through that, stress the body. And so that's the first 30 minutes. And sometimes I even like to press because a lot of it is stored in the gut. So just kind of slight pressure in there because a lot of time there's a resistance.
Yes.
And then the last half is definitely reconnecting to the gratitude and allowing love back in. So often our self-talk, that shame critic, is so negative to ourselves, and we just got to allow more love in, and that's kind of what I try and bring that in more for the next half. It's more the parasympathetic nervous system, and a lot of it is just, when's the last time you've sat an hour and given yourself that space, that time to connect to your heart and get out of your ego?
Yeah.
Ego's
the worst. People don't realize you actually don't have to keep that on a steady diet. Like you know what I mean? You can kind of dig into other things. It's not about that, right? Being more, soul forward and letting your ego be drug around instead of your ego dragging your soul around, which is what 95% of us, do.
I move so much more now in intuition and what feels right and guiding me. Sometimes people are like, did you get a PR after your book or anything? And I was like, I didn't, because I really wanted a natural flow of where the connection, and it has been this organic flow and moving intuition and removing fear. Sometimes I'm like, who am I, to want a podcast now, to want this and write another book. But at the same time, just relieve that fear, that self-doubt. Yes. I've already seen the impact of my book, even if it just impacts one person. But I know it's impacted more than one.
Of course, right? But like you said, when you come from that place where it's like, yes, is it scary and is it all of the things? Yes, but you're doing the right thing. You're being pulled and you're being called. And when you find that you impact, when I get a direct message from somebody that, it makes me sound like 100 when I say direct message, or DM for you younger folks, Jesus, so sorry. But when I get a DM from somebody that's like, you really impacted me, right? Or when I hear from a friend, or when I hear from somebody that I've known, previously, that's like, you've changed things for me. You've changed the game because I was able to get curious. And that's literally all I'm peddling, is get curious about yourself. Yeah. And that doesn't have to cost anything. No. Right? So it's like being able to do that is so incredibly powerful. I want to read something back to you from your book that really stood out to me, because I have this whole thing that I say, fix your shit, right? Different tactic. You say it very, very much more eloquently than I do. But when I read it, it was like, that's exactly what she's saying. But it says, be the voice that no longer hides the truth behind silence and closed doors. Be willing to look into the closet of your generations and do the work necessary to clean it up. Right? Equals fix your shit. Yes. Right? But it's like, how powerful is that to really go in, figure out yourself, knowing that, like, if you do that work, your life is going to be so much better. Yeah. Right? Do you feel like you have to come from a place of numbing? It's like, no, it doesn't mean you're not still going to get triggered by things or whatever's going to come up. But when you really work through the bulk of that and whatever healing modality you choose, it's like, life just gets so much better after that point.
Well, now when I do still get triggered, and you're still gonna, forever growth, I ask those questions like, where did that come from?
Yes.
As to why. And when I couldn't figure it out, actually there was a few things I was like, I couldn't figure it out, I couldn't pinpoint it. So then, I was like, okay, what kind of therapy will get me to really finding the root cause? So actually I've been really intrigued by plant medicine and therapies and whatnot. So I found a fantastic trauma counselor here, and she put me through a journey with plant medicine. And you talk about a 6-hour session. I pretty much did 10 years of therapy.
I believe it. I believe it. It's savage. But for people that are like, I don't want to spend 4 years in therapy, you don't have to.
No. And it took me back. And in a lot of these things, the root cause actually was taking me back hundreds of years, like, of generational patterns. And that's why it didn't make sense to me. I couldn't remember them. Or even being in my mom's womb. You're talking about where the 8-year-old was coming in. Well, for me, it was in the womb. My mom got a really, really bad car crash in the womb. And I had a twin, a brother, and he passed during that time. So I saw that loss. So that's all the stuff that I saw. And so from a very young age, that safety and wanting to be a parent role was what I was born into, and so that feeling so strong, that was safety for me. Yeah. I don't need anybody because, when I was born, both my parents were not at a place where they were just a lot of trauma, on both sides. So then for me, I went into the parent role from birth.
For your parents, right?
Which
is crazy as a child to have to do that.
So realize that through that. Yes. But I didn't remember. Actually, a lot of the times people ask me, do you remember much in your childhood? I actually had blocked off probably 5 years old and under. And now I know why. Because of these modalities and therapies, you might be like, why am I on edge? Or why am I holding on a little bit to that anxiety or anger? Well, it came from that safe place, and it generational. So it was it's so profound to be able to work and understand these patterns. So now I always ask, okay, I got a little triggered. Where is it coming from? Yes. And do have the tools, right? And I'm trying to teach that to my kids too. Talk about my son, teaching him to feel the emotion, because he's definitely so hard on himself, and perfectionism, and that guilt and shame that comes with survivors of suicide is real. Like, my son was only 6, and he thought it's his fault. He would say, my fault. I didn't love Dad enough. I didn't, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was not your fault. So much weight. And for him, drawing was a big thing. He'd draw a lot, but he would hold a lot in. So I've been teaching him, no, let's feel it. And there was anger.
Yeah.
I've talked very openly about his anger, but that's because he was storing so much. And also anger is a healthy emotion, but there's healthy ways to release it and express it. So teaching him the tools, I actually bought a drum. So I said, your drum when you're feeling mad. Like, just drum it so hard.
Give it hell. Absolutely.
Give it hell.
Absolutely.
Boxing, I've got boxing too for him. But I said, those are healthy ways. It's okay, But, and my daughter as well, to just be able to talk and express. Actually, cold plunge is really healing, like water as well. But trying to figure out what works for them. What are the tools for them? And it's just trying it all, breath work too. Actually, my son, a couple of weeks ago, he had this concert at school that he was part of, and I could tell he was nervous up on the stage. And all of a sudden I see him go,
oh God, I'm so proud.
Close his eyes, and I'm like,
I don't get prouder. I don't get prouder. That's what we should be teaching our kids, right? It's like, how are we not teaching our kids in school or otherwise emotional intelligence?
I know. I wish we could go into the schools. I keep thinking maybe I need to create a program and bring it to school, because when my kids went back to school after their dad passed, because they had missed, I think, 3 weeks or something, I was like, they were not prepared for the emotions they're going to go through. And so I brought this chart, because a friend of mine had given me a chart where had a picture for each emotions and how to describe it and what tools to do and how do you feel afterwards. And they were just kind of like pictures. Yeah. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll bring it into each classroom and they could start incorporating it. Mateus was only in kindergarten. Sophia was in 2nd grade. So I thought, well, why don't they have this already for these age groups? Start naming it. And how does it feel? What are tools? Like, the tools on the cards is like, hug a stuffy, or take deep breaths, drink a glass of water, draw. There's different activities on there. So at least it gives them the tools of what they can do. And I do feel that it needs to be integrated in kindergarten.
I agree with you. And I think that's how we fix stuff, right? Is to talk about, okay, we know what it looks like to just keep passing it down and carry it. We can watch that in people in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Go ahead and just take a look around, right? Because most of us are numbing out with whatever our numb of choice is, right? And again, I'm not coming from a place of judging. I've been in the trenches. But when you realize life is so much better past that, it makes me want to, right? I have my 18-year-old son, who is the most intelligent, emotionally intelligent man that I've met, and to be able to have a hand in that. But up until he was 10, it was same, like just teaching people to push stuff down. Thank God, my life kind of had that whole change where it's like, we're supposed to be using this like a compass, right? Our emotions. We're supposed to be leaning into that and processing things as they happen instead of pushing stuff down. So when emotion comes up for him, or when he's feeling things, watching him process that in a healthy way, I'm like, yes, he's not going to be a man who's 40 that's dragging all of this stuff around, not able to really plug into life and engage in a way that's meaningful.
And so he'll be able to find a significant other that is good for him. He's at a good place, right? Instead of both trauma.
Right, exactly. Because you and your husband, right? You're broken, he's broken. We both meet each other, right? And then what does that look like, right? We can watch it in every household in America, because most people have not. I think about that. I was thinking about that this morning from this standpoint of dating or finding a mate. When you're at this place where, okay, you've maybe done the work to kind of heal that. And for me, it's like, if you haven't addressed your childhood, I'm out, right? Like
that was like when I'm manifesting the man. It was like, emotional intelligence and communication, and have done the work, because we all have trauma. I love that you had mentioned earlier is that sometimes we compare ourselves to, I wasn't abused, I wasn't this, so my trauma is not bad. No, your body will react the same. So still work on it. Yes. And so then you don't bring it into relationship. And that's probably why for me, I there's no judgment, everyone processes differently, but I really didn't date for at least 2 years post my husband, because I knew I knew I didn't want to attract, the wrong person, and I wanted to be at a good place, so then I could attract a healthy, emotional man, and it works.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. I love it. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for coming and spending time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Melissa's book is called The Truth Behind the Smiles, and highly recommend. Very insightful of just kind of the struggles that she went through with her, big event, unfortunately, that happens, but able to kind of work through that and make your mess be your message, and I love that. So,
thank you.
To wrap up, that's our time. If you have any questions, suggestions, please send us an email. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com. Please do all the things to support the pod so that we can continue to do this important work. Follow, share, rate, and review. We will catch you next time. That's a wrap.
I'd love to help you get vulnerable. Let's get naked.